There's one issue that over 98% of people have that is creating many of the other issues that they're experiencing. And on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we are identifying what that issue is and what you can do about it. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. And welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing one issue that we have seen time and time again be a catalyst, be the thing that is propelling many of the other issues that people are experiencing in their life. But we want to start off by saying, if what we are saying today is resonating with you, if it's something that you can relate to, if you're raising your hand saying, yeah, that sounds like something that I'm experiencing as well, helping people to overcome this issue is something that we specialize in here at Muscle Activation Schaumburg. And so if you are wanting to get started with your own journey of overcoming this one issue, that is something we can help you with. All you have to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to www.matschaumburg.com. On our website, there's a big green button that you click that says Get Started, and then you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. So, there is one issue, like I was saying, one issue that so many people experience, that so many people suffer from, that ends up being a huge driver of many of the other issues that they're experiencing, okay? Whether it's different aches and pains that they have in their body, a lack of strength, whether they're feeling deconditioned, they don't feel as physically fit as they once did, whether they feel like their mobility or flexibility isn't like it once was, they're feeling stiffer, achy, like they're not able to move as well. And once this one issue gets addressed, then all the other issues can start to get resolved. Now, there's one issue is not being honest with yourself. I know a lot of times we talk about things like, exercise and muscles and everything like that, but this is a huge component of this idea of being able to live the life that you want to live, not being held back by your physical body, is getting very, very honest with yourself about two things. Number one, where you are at right now, and number two, what you are doing. And we see time and time again that people are, I don't want to say they're lying to themselves, but they are not completely honest about those things with themselves. And because of that, they start to see that their physical health, their physical abilities, their physical function starts to suffer. We want to talk with you about that today.
That's right. You know what? And I think sometimes being honest with yourself can mean like you're lying to yourself, but it can also be because of lack of exposure to different ideas, right? Like, for example, I work with a lot of women 50 and over. And the number one thing that is marketed to them to do for exercise is walking. And then when women are walking, a lot of them do walk for their exercise, then they're wondering, well, why am I losing conditioning? Why am I losing mobility? I'm walking. It must be some external factor that I can't control, like my age or my genetics or, something like that. Why is my body, not responding and getting weaker and weaker, and I can't reach up, and going grocery shopping is now difficult? Well, if you keep your scope very narrow to people that say, well, walking is the best form of exercise, and then that's all that you do, then yes, your conditioning is going to decrease. Your mobility is going to decrease. And so what's really important, though, is to, if you're aware about and about strength training and other opportunities in exercise, to be like, hey, it does make sense that if I work on my strength, I might keep my strength. Or if I work on my stamina, I might keep my stamina. And then some other people haven't been exposed to this idea. So either way, it's looking at what you're doing and realizing that maybe what you're doing isn't actually helping what you're wanting to be doing. I saw this really interesting quote the other day online that said, you don't look like your goals, you look like your habits. Or you don't act like your goals, you act like your habits, right? And so what dawned on me about this is I think that we all have aspirations of like what we'd like to do. Whether you're saying, hey, I want to be traveling the world. I want to be really active with my grandkids. I want to be able to walk all the way to the park, with my husband, or be able to do our walking loop or go skiing or whatever it is that you're wanting to do at whatever age. And oftentimes, if we're unable to do that, we feel like, oh man, like I feel like I've done everything that I could to do that. But what actually creates change so that you can be doing your goals is the habits that you do, the actions that you're doing each and every day or each and every week to create a scenario where your body is easily able to do the activities that you want. And so I think really examining what you are actually doing in your life and in your exercise life, especially since we're talking about your physical capabilities, and being able to look through that and figure out where are my holes and where do I need to fill in so that I am able to participate in my life the way I want to.
Yeah, that's a really, really big thing. And we see that these ways in which we are telling ourselves like different versions or kind of skewing reality to ourselves, they tend to show up in different demographics differently. Okay, the question of like, where am I at right now? It tends to affect people more who are in their 60s and younger. Okay, and my guess is because, you know, when you are in high school and when you are in your, college and early 20s, you have a certain level of strength, you have a certain level of physical fitness that is, easier to maintain. It's easy to display. And then you maybe don't start training as hard. Then you maybe don't start pushing your body as hard, but your mind still believes that you're at the place that you were. And so while your mind is still young, while you are still feeling like, okay, yeah, like I'm fully capable, I can still, do everything that I want to do, people often believe that they are as strong, as physically fit, as athletic, as fast as they were, 10, 20 years ago, even if they haven't been putting in the effort to maintain that. Once people get past their 60s, I think reality starts setting in more. They are more honest with themselves about like physically where they're at. But I mean, just look at the number of people who didn't do anything for decades, and then as soon as they got exposed to pickleball, they're like, oh yeah, I'm an athlete again that plays pickleball. It's like, okay, now we see pickleball injuries going through the roof because people aren't honest about where they're at. All right. So that's number one. Secondly is being honest about what you're doing about it. And this does tend to affect all age ranges, but it also tends to affect more heavily people who are older. And why this, my guess is to why this happens, is because we start giving ourselves permission to do less and saying that doing less is enough. Okay? In your 20s, you may have been working out really hard. In your 30s, you may have been working out really hard. And then at some point in your life, you decide that you're not going to work out as hard anymore. But you're still telling yourself the story that, I am somebody who works out hard. And so now in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s, you still carry that story, that identity with you. But even though you're not taking the same actions that you were 20, 30, 40 years ago, you still view yourself through that lens. And so we're like, okay, well, yeah, I work out, I go walking. And it's like, okay, cool, but like you're not actually being honest about what you're doing to build your strength. Oh, I do this class, where we're doing a lot with like, some light weights or bands. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you're not really being honest about what you're actually doing to try to challenge your cardiovascular fitness. And so it's no wonder that you're feeling weaker. It's no wonder that you are feeling less physically conditioned. Because we're not being honest about what we're actually doing versus what we need to be doing.
You're totally right, Charlie. And, sometimes this is like the hardest thing to do because we do feel like I want to validate my efforts, right? I want to feel like, yeah, I have walked, I do these classes, and yet I still got, I don't know, can't keep up with basketball, or I got diagnosed with osteoporosis, and they say the best thing is exercise, and I have been exercising, right? But it's really looking at, hey, are there places where I can change? Because no matter what age you are, the good news is you can always change your actions. You can always be outside the norm. I think what's so interesting too is as we get older, a lot of people have said to us, well, yeah, you just can't work out as hard anymore. I'm like, well, it's certainly not common, right? Because when you're older, or, and we even see it with people in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, different orthopedic issues start to arise. So you have to actually be a little bit smarter and strategic about how you're exercising, which is very different than when people are indoctrinated into exercise, which is in high school. You can basically do anything in high school and feel fine. But as you get older, you have to actually learn some things, develop some strategy. And so it is hard to reflect on, hey, what have I been not doing that has led me to this place? And honestly, once you can realize that your actions have led you to where you are, you can now change them, which is cool because you're taking ownership. An example that I recently experienced in my life is before becoming a mom, I used to just, do all exercises all the time, right? I was in the fitness field, did it all, more, taught 30 classes of group fitness all the time. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm just never going to get stronger. Like I'm never going to physically be able to lift more or feel like I can, grow my muscle size. But when I looked at it, I'm like, well, you're not doing anything to grow your muscle size. You're doing everything to deplete your body, to burn more calories, to work more and more and more. It never was to actually lift more, to actually be able to challenge your body more. And so what's interesting is in the last, year, 6 months or a year, I've actually changed my exercise because I reflected on that. And it did kind of feel like I was invalidating my efforts for a little bit. But now I'm like, wow, I actually am lifting way more because I'm doing less in my workouts. I'm changing what I'm doing. So really looking at what are you doing? What are you trying to get to? Like, remember, habits and goals. Your habits are what lead to your goals. You don't just arrive at your goals by doing random stuff, right? So what habits are you doing? What are you regularly visiting with your body to lead you to your goals? To piggyback off of Charlie's example with the pickleball thing, is like, that's a really popular and fun sport for a lot of people that have been retired from sports from a long time, and they're like, oh, well, I guess my knees just can't handle pickleball because, they're old. Well, when's the last time you did anything to strengthen your knees? And now you're using your knees and pounding on your knees and asking your knees to go side to side so quickly, or, whatever joint it is. But these are just examples to help you reflect on your own life and be like, hey, if getting in and out of the car isn't working for me, when's the last time you actually worked on, some of that core strength or your hip strength? And once you can identify like, hey, there are places that I can start improving on, that's when you can start improving on it because you've identified it.
Exactly. We are definitely not immune to this ourselves. I mean, to go along with your story, Julie, a story that I kept about myself for a really long time is, oh yeah, I can dunk and I can dunk easily because that is the identity that I developed for myself, by the time I was, in college and in my early 20s. And even though I hadn't really ever challenged myself or tested whether or not I could still dunk and still dunk easily, I always had that belief about myself. And then the day came where I was like, okay, like I'm going to go try to dunk again. And while I still could dunk, it was not nearly as easy as I remember it being. And so then a new story gets put in. And the first story that gets put in is like, well, maybe I have, I passed my window where I'm going to be able to do this, right? And a lot of people say, well, maybe I've just gotten too old. And then I started looking at some other things. And one thing that I used to be able to do really easily was squat well over 400 pounds. I don't know that today I could squat over 400 pounds. Maybe I could, but I'm not sure. In part because I haven't tested it. I've worked up close to that, but I surely haven't had 405 pounds on my back in quite some time. And so instead of having the story of like, well, I'm just getting old, this is lost forever, there's nothing I can do about it. It's like, well, there's a lot that I can still do to build my strength. Like, of course, dunking isn't going to feel as effortless as it once was because I haven't been doing it for quite some time. And by these measures, my strength has decreased. And so it's like, okay, cool. Now I know what I need to do. I need to practice dunking. I need to get my strength back up. And sure enough, by doing those things, all of a sudden, dunking got way easier and started to feel a lot more like it used to. It was like, okay, I had to get very honest with myself about where I was at. I need to get very honest with myself about what I was doing. And once I could do those things, now all of a sudden I could get to the place physically where I wanted to be. Julie, I also remember you making a post, I don't know, maybe last year or something like that, where you were like, point of view, sitting here thinking that my metabolism's slowing down, because I'm getting old, when in fact realizing that, I used to swim 5 hours a day in high school. And it was like, okay, like, very honest about yourself, like, Back when you had a quote unquote high metabolism, you were working out for hours on end. And now that's not the case, and rightfully so. It's not the case. Who has time to work out for 5 hours
Except
at
when
a
you're in
time?
high school.
Except when you're in high school, right? Or
It's funny you brought that up because as you were saying that, I'm like, I'm going to share that next.
oh, sorry, yeah.
I was thinking about that, yeah. But it was funny, like, yeah, when I would view myself as high metabolism, I went from high school exercising all the time, zero stress basically relative to now, and then I went to college where I biked everywhere. I went to UF. The campus is 8 miles long. You were going from class to class. I would bike for probably just an hour a day just getting to class. That's not to mention the walking and the stairs and the exercise that I did. And so it's funny, like, when you actually reflect on what you were doing, it's like, oh, okay, I sit at doctor's offices at least once a week, and then I'm knitting for another, and I'm reading, and I'm doing what maybe older people do, but hey, it's not your metabolism, it's actually that you've actually changed your behaviors. And so yes, there are changes that happen to our joints and our muscles as we get older, but so much is changing because your behavior has changed. And that part is what you need to focus on, because that's what you can really make big changes on. And we know that most of the normal aging process can be negated with regular exercise, regular strength training. And so we really encourage you to take a peek at that, because that's where a lot of people are giving themselves permission to start backing down and then wondering why they're losing their conditioning, they're losing their mobility, they're kind of gathering up aches and pains as the years go by. So we want you to be feeling strong, as conditioned as possible, and as capable as possible.
Exactly. And so that's something that we see a lot with clients is once we can, conquer these two things, being very honest with themselves about where they're at and being very honest with themselves about what they are doing, then we see people progress, regardless of what their age is, regardless of what their physical fitness habits have been like over the past 10, 20 years. We're able to see them start to make progress once we can be very honest about these two things. And so what do you do about this? First of all is, you need to be honest, but one thing you need to implement is a way to actually check yourself, test yourself, challenge yourself, and see, okay, well, how far off am I from the image and the identity that I have in my head about myself versus where my body actually is? What's that delta? What's that difference between the two? And so when you can identify that, then you can start to implement a plan to progress. You can start to implement a plan to bridge that gap. But you need to be able to identify where you're at, and then you need to implement a plan that you follow consistently in order to make that gap smaller. And so that's a lot of what we help people with here at Muscle Activation Stromberg. We do that through muscle activation techniques, about helping people get very honest about the state of their muscles, what about the muscles that they have that are not working well and the muscles that they have that are working well, and being able to build upon the muscles that aren't working well while continuing to progress the ones that are working well. And so be able to kind of rebuild people's bodies with that, and then put together a plan of exercise to help them be able to work out in a way that is suitable for their body, is suitable for their life, that they're able to do consistently. And so if implementing a plan like that, if getting started on a process like that is of interest to you, like I said, that is what we specialize in here at Muscle Activation Stromberg. So all you have to do to get started with this is go to www.matstromberg.com. On our website, there is a big green button that says Get Started, and you can click that. You can get yourself scheduled up for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is not being honest with themselves about where they're at, about what they're doing, and they are wanting to make progress with their physical health, with their physical fitness, but they are not making the progress that they're wanting to make, in part because they're not being honest with themselves? Share this episode with them so they can understand the steps that they can start taking today in order to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Please share this episode. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you listen to us. It helps this message spread and reach more people, and we really appreciate every single time you do. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.